When I started in shipping, we had shipping routes in the 70s, early 70s, all over Europe. But they were all closed down once our companies were taken over, and everything was moved down south, and our supply chain was locked into a very expensive supply chain through southern England. And that's our dependency system at the moment. So just very briefly on demand for ferries in Scotland, we have about 50, 60 ferries, 30 on the west coast, 20 in the Northern Isles, but we need about 100 new ferries. And we developed a proposal with Stuart Ballantyne of a large, a major ship design company in Australasia. He's built over 100 ferries in Asia, and he's put together a proposal which, again, the Scottish Government we've spoken to Kate Forbes, Jenny Gilruth, others, but we get no action. There's no action. They put in place people at Ferguson's, they bring up consultants from south, and they don't know anything about ferries, they don't know anything about shipbuilding, but they're running our shipyard. We put people in place in CMAL and CalMac that don't know anything about ferries. Usually people bring in. They don't use if you like, the native expertise that we have. And we have it. And it's usually diaspora as well. The Scottish diaspora have done everything globally because they can't do it here. We're prevented from developing our own nation. And this is a real problem. Next. So this is one of Stuart Ballantyne's designs. He's building 30 of these for the Philippines. And basically, what you need for a shipbuilding strategy is the right infrastructure, the right ship design, the best global design, the lowest cost, the most efficient operation. And the catamarans do that. We've had the catamarans operating in Orkney now for over 10 years. There's 2 operating there. They operate at a third the cost of a CalMac ship, much more efficient to operate. No subsidy required in many cases because they're so efficient. With subsidies, they could be free. Next slide. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so it's possible to put together a shipbuilding strategy. We've put that together with the Inchgreen Dry Dock Group, the people that want to develop Govan Dry Dock. Inchgreen Dry Dock is prevented from being used by the Port of Liverpool, which is owned by Peel Ports, which is a Channel Islands equity fund. They own the Clyde. So we had a Cayman Island fund owning the Forth. It's now part of Canadian Pension Fund, but it's still an offshore fund. The Clyde is owned by Channel Islands equity funds that own the Port of Liverpool. And they're preventing the dry dock, the biggest dry dock, one of the biggest dry docks in Europe, from being used on the Clyde that could be used for ship production, ship repair and manufacturing these vessels. Next slide. Yeah, so this just shows the cost differential for the catamarans. Yeah, you can get them much less than half the cost of a typical CalMac prototype. The CalMac ships are all prototypes. They're designed, every ship is different. So it's like going to a car manufacturer and asking them to build your design rather than just buying a Fiesta off the shelf. It's crazy. But we could be building these standard proven ships, which are also the safest ships in the world, I should add. Next slide. Next slide. Let's go on. Yeah, so that's proposal for shipbuilding, to build 100 ferries in Scotland, and also maybe for the urban services that Ian mentioned, Forth and Clyde. I should mention that I did studies on the Burnt Island Granton ferry service, and we had the Orkney operator was wanting to put 2 catamarans on that route back before the bridge was closed and before the new bridge was built. And his blockage was the councils did not support his service. They would not put in place a park and ride facility at Burnt Island. And the Forth Ports wanted to tax every passenger trip crossing the river. So they wanted to charge every passenger going across the river. And that was at the time that the road tolls were taken off. So it wasn't economic. And yet this operator was willing to put in place a ship or 2 ships to run a service every 20 minutes across Grant and Burnt Island, which would have been just normal everywhere else. The operator of the London Thames Clipper services, Sean Collins, was wanting to do the same on the Clyde, but using several vessels, low airdraft catamarans running from Glasgow Central all the way down to Dumbarton. 14 stops on a 15-minute frequency. A new river bus system, just like London, just like Brisbane, just like Sydney, Parramatta. All these cities have ferry services. The city council refused to support it, refused to put in place the pontoons. The private operating that owned the port, the Peel Ports Equity Fund, wanted to, again, put in blockages and earn money out of this system. So that's chased it away as well. And the council just wanted to put more low bridges across the river, which actually blocked navigation. So the engineers in Glasgow were not really pro-maritime at all. So they don't use the rivers, they don't use the maritime infrastructure. We are prevented from developing by a mindset, if you like. Next slide. Yeah, that's the dry dock at Inchgreen at the top right. It's not used, it's not been used for, I think, a decade or more. Next slide, please. Yeah, just to summarize, yeah, there's a tremendous amount to do. With colonialism, you are an underdeveloped nation. In maritime sense, I've traveled the world like Ian has and done studies on ports and shipping globally, and we are starting from pretty much zilch. We have to rebuild, and the only way to do that is through independence. That's the only way to develop this nation. Thank you.
David, is Elliot there?